On this day in 1965, one of the most influential sci-fi novels of all time was published. Frank Herbert's Dune finally received the cinematic release it deserved when Denis Villeneuve took on this enormous task. What do you think of his adaptation? Let us know in the comments.
Number 10. Emperor Shaddam's older appearance.
Deal with this prophet. Send assassins.
Dune Part 2 introduces us to Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, played by Christopher Walken. The book establishes Shadam as 72 years old. Walken may seem age-appropriate since he's now in his 80s, but the book notes that Shadam looks like a 35-year-old, maybe even younger. A regular dosage of spice does wonders for one's looks.
Your father was a weak man.
While Villeneuve could have cast a younger actor or de-aged Walken, he opted to have Shaddam look his age. Had Shaddam appeared younger like in the book, we imagine outsiders would question why he looks roughly the same age as his daughter. With Walken's casting, the film avoids an exposition dump. David Lynch's Dune and the 2000 miniseries also went with older actors, casting Jose Ferrer and Giancarlo Giannini respectively. Number 9. Paul vs. Jamas.
You should welcome my blade. This world will kill you. Quicker this way.
The first half of Villeneuve's adaptation builds to a confrontation between Paul Atreides and Jamas of the Fremen tribe. In the novel and film, this duel ends with blood on Paul's hands. The movie makes a few significant changes, however. Before officially meeting, Paul has visions of Jamas, seeing a path where they become friends.
You have much to learn. I will show you the ways of the desert. Come with me.
Instead, Paul proves himself to the Fremen by defeating Jamas, although some view him as a murderer rather than a messiah.
He said that. I got that. Thanks.
In addition to not having visions of Jamas in the book, Paul and Lady Jessica spend more time with the Fremen before the fight takes place. The film sets Paul up as a more divisive figure and emphasizes how his visions can lead to different outcomes.
I see possible futures all at once. And in so many futures, our enemies prevail. But I do see a way. There is a narrow way through.
Number 8. Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen's appearance.
He's psychotic.
Brought to life by Austin Butler, Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen is another figure who debuts in Dune Part 2. While Butler accurately portrays Feyd-Rautha's menacing charisma, the film makes some tweaks to his appearance. In the book, you wouldn't necessarily guess Feyd-Rautha and Baron Vladimir Harkonnen are related based on appearance.
The desert takes the weak. My desert. My Arrakis. My Dune.
In addition to not looking much like his uncle, Feyd-Rautha stands out from most of the Harkonnen. Although Feyd-Rautha is much leaner than the Baron in Villeneuve's adaptation, his physical appearance otherwise doesn't stick out drastically. Gone is his dark hair, instead rocking a bald head like the rest of House Harkonnen. The film relies more on Butler's expressions and body language, which tells the audience that Feyd-Rautha is deadlier than the average Harkonnen.
Deal with this prophet.
Show me who you are.
Number 7. The Dinner Party.
By the fireplace, Lingar Butte, water shipper from the polar region. The man to his right.
Spacing Guild representative, how could I miss him?
The man with Tufa is Esmar Tuek, smuggler, highly successful. He has fast ships, if we need them.
Even with two films that have a combined runtime of 322 minutes, a few moments from Herbert's first novel were inevitably omitted. One of the most prominent scenes not to make the cut sees the Atreides attend a dinner not long after arriving on Arrakis, hosted by Duke Leto. The banquet includes merchants, smugglers, guild bankers, and various others.
If it weren't for the spice, no one would bother about it at all.
Fortunately enough, for a water seller like you, I would guess.
This not only expands upon the universe that Herbert created, but also dives deeper into the political tensions surrounding this planet. In a production this lengthy and expensive, we understand why they would have to exclude any scenes that aren't 100% necessary.
We both suffer the solitude of our birthright.
Except that tomorrow, you'll return to the comfort of your palaces on Kaite.
To the confinement of its perfect gardens and lonely apartments.
The dinner party might not have been essential, but it encompassed some of the franchise's finest world building and could have further elevated Villeneuve's adaptation. Number 6. Liet Kynes Gender.
Bless the Maker and his water. Bless the coming and going of him. May his passage cleanse the world and keep the world for his people.
Chani is barely in Dune Part 1, and Princess Irulan was reserved for Part 2. It makes sense why Villeneuve aspired to create more roles for women. Otherwise, Lady Jessica would be the only female with substantial screen time. Sharon Duncan Brewster plays Dr. Liet Kynes, who was male in Herbert's book and previous adaptations.
Arrakis could have been a paradise. The work had begun, but then the spice was discovered. Suddenly, no one wanted the desert to go away.
As Villeneuve saw it, this quote doesn't change the nature of the character. It just makes it closer to the world today and more relevant and, frankly, more interesting. Beyond the gender swap, Kynes meets a slightly different fate in the film. Instead of dying from dehydration and delirium after being stranded in the desert, Kynes is given a more triumphant exit, summoning a sandworm that consumes her and her attackers.
I serve only one master. His name is Shai-Hulud.
Number 5. Lady Jessica's increased role.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
Lady Jessica has always been an important figure, but Villeneuve's 2 films develop her into an even more layered character. The book describes Jessica as Leto Atreides' quote, concubine. While the film doesn't change her role, Jessica commands more respect, and Duke Leto is more openly affectionate towards her. The film also removes a plot point where Jessica is suspected of being a Harkonnen spy.
Fear is the mind killer. Is the little death that brings obliteration.
After escaping into the desert with Paul and becoming a reverend mother, Jessica's presence in the novel is slowly but surely reduced. Not wanting Rebecca Ferguson to be, quote, an expensive extra, Villeneuve sought to make Jessica a constant presence. Dune Part 2 thus sees her interact more with Paul and the Fremen, proving to have a powerful influence.
Do you believe in Paul?
There are signs.
Number 4. Chani's dynamic with Paul.
I won't be fighting for him. I'm fighting for my people.
Like Lady Jessica, Chani was integral to the book, but she's taken to new depths in the movies, especially Dune Part 2. The film does an effective job of building a loving relationship between her and Paul, which makes it all the more tragic when they're driven apart.
I want you to know I will love you as long as I breathe.
You will never lose me as long as you stay who you are.
At the center of the conflict is the prophecy that Paul is destined to be the chosen one. While Paul initially rejects this idea, he eventually comes to embrace it. In a change from the book, Chani speaks out against these long-held religious beliefs.
This prophecy is how they enslave us!
With both headed down different paths, Paul is given more incentive to marry Princess Irulan. Unlike the book where Chani becomes Paul's concubine, Dune Part 2 ends with Chani striking out independently. Number 3. No Leto II.
It's been a while since you've had one of those nightmares. Tell me, what was it about?
It's only fragments.
In Herbert's novel, Paul has a son with Chani, naming him after his late father. When the Fremen are attacked only a couple of years later, Leto II is among the casualties. We can see why Dune Part 2 left out Leto II for a few reasons. To begin, the film is already nearly 3 hours long. The pacing likely would have suffered if the film introduced Paul's firstborn only to quickly take him out of the picture.
I want you to take Leto and return to the Southern Siege. I want you safe.
Secondly, reading about Leto II's death is one thing, but seeing it depicted on screen may have been more than some audiences could handle. Finally, Dune Messiah sees Paul and Chani have another son, who's also confusedly named Leto II. So, this spares us from any repetitive plot points.
It's up to you now, my son. The Golden Path is dangerous, son.
Number 2. Alia Atreides, saved for another sequel. Anya Taylor-Joy makes a surprise cameo in Dune Part 2 as Paul's sister Alia via a vision. Other than this, we don't see Alia outside of her mother's womb. Jessica spends the whole movie pregnant with no major time jump, although it's strongly hinted that Alia will play a vital role in future sequels. Alia is born in Herbert's first book, leading to some of the most, let's say, colorful moments.
Boy,
Emperor. I'm afraid my brother won't be very pleased with you.
Silence! Kill this child. She's an abomination. Kill her.
Get out of my mind!
Due to the water of life, Alia comes into the world a full Reverend Mother. What's more, she's essentially an adult in the body of a child, allowing her to take out the Baron at age 2.
Come to me, Baron.
While the Baron meets his end in the film, Alia isn't the one who does him in. Before we unveil our top pick, here are some honorable mentions. Paul's first interaction with a sandworm. The film puts him in more jeopardy. Dr. Yue's betrayal. The book hints at a traitor, although the movie treats it as a surprise.
I had no choice. The Harkonnens have my wife, Mana. They take her apart like a doll.
The Sardaukars attire while attacking House Atreides. They disguise themselves as Harkonnen in the book, but not the movie. Gurney Halleck versus Glasu Raban. While not in the book, we could use a rematch between Thanos and Drax.
Look who's back from the dead.
A more action-packed climax. Only a few pages in the book, but Villeneuve takes advantage of the visual medium.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
Number 1. Paul Atreides, Messiah or Anti-Hero?
It's coming. I see unholy war spreading across the universe like unquenchable fire. A warrior religion that waves the Atreides banner in my father's name. Fanatical legions worshipping at the shrine of my father's skull. A war in my name!
Those who've read the Dune novels know that Paul Atreides isn't an idealistic everyman. He's an anti-hero who has many qualities we associate with great leaders, but he also exemplifies the issues that come with proclaiming someone a messiah.
The prophet. Why is that a bad thing? Use it.
Because all my visions lead to horror.
Because you lose control.
Because I gain it.
That was always Frank Herbert's intention, although numerous readers didn't seem to understand this when the first book came out. To set the record straight, Herbert leaned more into Paul's flawed nature with Dune Messiah. Villeneuve doesn't want to wait for the third film to bring out Paul's dark side, establishing early on that despite being the protagonist, he's not always heroic. If anything, Paul demonstrates why we should, quote, beware of heroes, which Herbert felt was, quote, the bottom line of the Dune trilogy.
It's not a prophecy, it's a story.
Were these changes for the better or worse? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
I will do what must be done.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.